and we're talking about a Niner Monday night game. Is it as big or bigger than the Warriors season opener? And it's kind of a laughable comparison because, of course, a Monday night football game is far bigger, but based on last night and Chris Paul and what this team is thinking about becoming and what we know about Chase Center and Joe Lacob in here yesterday morning live with the boys talking about how much he wants to win, it feels like this Warriors season is as big as any season has been in a long time.
Well, I agree with that because, A, it's always a little more intense at the beginning of the season when you didn't win the year before.
True.
Right? I think that. Secondly, the curiosity around Chris Paul, the fact that people, I think, are still sort of like, wait a minute, he's on the Warriors? So that's a big deal. And then what I think I'm really tapping into that I watched yesterday, and we talked about it at once a couple hours ago, is simply the feeling around the team. I liken it to the feeling when you get out of a bad relationship. When you get out of a bad relationship, there's a feeling of freedom, there's a feeling of joy, there is a feeling of curiosity of like, okay, what am I going to do next? You know what I mean? It's like, I could go anywhere. I could do anything at any moment. I might meet somebody who's interesting, and that person might be next. I think all of us have been through that in our lives, and there is a feeling of, sometimes we get out of a relationship and it's the worst thing in the world. But I mean a bad one, like something that's toxic. When you get out of it, there is an inherent joy to what you're doing, and I do feel that right now with the Warriors. There appears to be an inherent joy to being on the court, putting the uniforms on, and being together. And I'm not going to turn that into blame Jordan Poole. I'm simply going to say that Jordan was at the center of this dynamic that took the whole team down last year. Was not all his fault by any stretch, but it got to a point where that situation was no longer workable, and you can see it. You can see it on the faces of everybody you're watching right now, whether it was on TV, highlights, or you went to the game. You can see that this team is in a completely different space in terms of mental health.
Yeah, and Steph and Clay and Draymond felt like they wanted to play alongside adults, and now you've heard about leadership and connectivity and all the rest of it, all these things that they have now, and it's no direct slight at Jordan Poole, but it's absolutely an indirect slight against Jordan Poole, because now that he's gone, and we talked about it yesterday, Bonte made great points about the pace that this team is going to play with, and it's not going to be so scattered and so up and down with Jordan Poole. Maybe it was Butcher Boy who was saying it, but I totally agree in terms of this team now feels like it fits together on the court, where Jordan Poole's trying to play 100 miles an hour and the rest of them are trying to play 60 miles an hour. And so when Chris Paul comes in, he plays a tempo that is a little bit more befitting of what the other guys here are trying to do.
I do like the word you just used.
Befitting?
Adults.
Yeah, okay.
Adults.
Yeah.
And I feel that. I mean, I think that they've done a great job of using all of the words that aren't that, but that's what they're saying. When you hear them say connectivity, when you hear them say experience,
leadership,
yep, veteran, when you hear it over and over and over again, I do think that's what they're trying to say. And again, this is not to put any sort of all of the blame in the story squarely on Jordan, and we've been through this and don't need to go over it again. But that is what that's what you're craving. And by the way, when you do come out of a bad relationship, you do sort of crave the opposite.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that's exactly what you need. But right? It's like if you had something that was super structured, maybe now you're looking for somebody who's like a little bit more wild and free and fun. Or if you were with the wild and the free and the fun, you're like, you know what? We need to get somebody to get their crap together.
Yeah.
And you swing the pendulum in the other direction. And I haven't thought about that trade in those terms so much, but my gosh, that's really what they did.
Yeah.
They turned Jordan Poole, young, wild, turnover prone, yappy, and decision-making often poor, but talented,
explosive,
shot-minded. They turned that into all of the opposite. The only thing that both of them do similar is talk. Both talk a lot. They both, I think, have a pretty good trash game.
Right.
That's literally the only comparison between these two players.
Jordan Poole is TIT, trash and training, and Chris Paul is a made man when it comes to trash talk. So Chris Paul would be in your all-NBA starting five, or at the very worst, your second team in terms of trash talk, verbal, nonverbal, his looks and his scowl, his flop game, and all the rest of it. And Jordan Poole is still learning all that. But when you look at last year, and I said this yesterday in the summit at Fieldwork Brewing in San Leandro, the players were showing you their frustration on the court. Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, guys who don't normally show that frustration. And it wasn't all about Jordan Poole, but they showed it in terms of Jordan Poole. So now you bring in Chris Paul, 38, going to be 39, and he's forgotten more basketball. He's been in the NBA longer than anybody on this team, other than Rudy Gay, perhaps. I'd have to check. I think they might have come in the same year, but I mean, he's been around. So he's not going to come across as petulant or me first or meteoric. Chris Paul is going to play the way he needs to play to get his team to win. He's competitive. He is a longtime NBA player. He's a Hall of Famer. So these guys, the veterans who were frustrated by Jordan Poole and maybe less patient with the way he was playing, you get a veteran in here and you add Saric and you add in Rudy Gay and Magruder and whoever else is going to make this team, and it feels like you don't have to suffer through the rookie mistakes as much anymore. Yeah,
by the way, Chris is about a year and a half older than Rudy. I don't know exactly when they came into the league. Might have still been the same year, but Chris Paul about a year and a half older than Rudy Gay. 888-957-9570. One of the things we've been talking about is simply your state of mind. I was really struck by the way everyone reacted to this preseason game for the Warriors last night. Are you suddenly in a Warriors state of mind, or are you still very much in a 49ers state of mind? We got into the conversation of which one are you more excited about, and I like, to me, of course it's the football game. Whether you think the game's massive, kind of big, whatever label you want to put on it, obviously there's more at stake in the 49er game than there is Tuesday night in the Warrior game. But looking at the drumbeat moving forward with the Warriors, combined with the fact that the 49ers feel like they're cruising and there's nothing to worry about, maybe the state of mind has shifted, at least this week, from Niners to Warriors.